Salamun alaikum, dear brothers and sisters in Islam and humanity. Welcome to the AlHaqq.com podcast, where we peel away the falsities with the light of the Quran. Michelangelo Buonarroti wasn't just a sculptor or a painter, he was a defining force of the Italian Renaissance. He notoriously believed that the true, perfect form already existed within the block of marble. His only task was to chip away the excess stone to free the masterpiece trapped inside. That is our vision for the Build Community project. The ideal structure is already there. Our task is to free it from the modern din, chipping away the noise, the superficiality, and the distractions to reveal something enduring. To do this, our conversations must have a dual purpose. We have to navigate the deeper philosophical dimensions to elevate our discourse, but we must also keep our feet firmly planted on the ground, addressing the real, everyday issues that affect our lives, our relationships, and our reality. At the very heart of building any enduring community rests the male-female dynamic, and to understand it properly, we first need to look at it objectively. Let's reset to the baseline, strip away religion, scripture, and societal expectations. Just pure pragmatic logic in the modern era. Imagine two men who are roommates. Why do they typically live together? Almost no one does this purely for companionship. It usually comes down to affordability and economic efficiency. In this scenario, there's a constant logical negotiation. They have to agree on fair protocols, personal space, upkeep of common areas, splitting of expenses, and dividing chores equitably. Does either roommate feel naturally entitled to the other's property or wealth? I don't think so. If they decide to split up and go their separate ways, does either owe any ongoing obligations to the other? Of course not. It's a practical, transactional arrangement. They may even be best of friends. Now imagine one roommate is a female and the other is male. There might be slight variances in how they interact, but structurally, the dynamic isn't too drastically different. The baseline remains. No inherent entitlement, no lifelong obligations. Now let's elevate that same secular objective framework to marriage. What are the rights and responsibility when a man and woman marry? Speaking purely logically. Both parties earn a living. They combine their private areas and upkeep their common areas, adding a layer of economic efficiency to their lives. But again, does one naturally feel entitled to the other's wealth, property, or comforts? If we are truly operating outside the confines of religion, how should it be? Objectively speaking, keeping physical realities in mind, the male is generally stronger. It makes sense that he bears the brunt of the physically demanding labor, heavy lifting, utilitarian tasks, and protections. The female, in turn, brings a different but equally vital element to the dynamic, adding softness, warmth, and comfort to the home. It is an exchange of distinct complementary strengths. When we bring scripture into the framework, the dynamic transforms from a cold transaction into a purposeful bond. Allah outlines the rights, responsibilities, and the underlying why of the dynamic clearly. Men are tasked with provision and protection because of the natural inclinations and responsibility Allah has distributed. The women are instructed towards obedience in the home as a complementary balance to that provision. Men are the caretakers of women as men have been provisioned by Allah over women and tasked with supporting them financially, and righteous women are devoutly obedient and when alone protective of what Allah has entrusted them with. This is in Surah Nisaa 4:34. The structure isn't designed for supremacy, it is designed for peace. The ultimate goal of the male-female dynamic is to establish a sanctuary. Quran chapter 30, verse 21. Allah mentions, "And of His signs is that He created for you from yourselves mates, that you may find tranquility in them, and He placed between you affection and mercy. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you may find comfort and tranquility in them." This is the most crucial component of building our community, and it requires honest dialogue. We invite women to come on the podcast, pull up a chair, and discuss this vital dynamic with us. Let's build a community together. Abdullah, what are your thoughts on the male-female dynamics in the modern era, and why do you think this topic doesn't get discussed very commonly across the gender divide?
Well, I think specifically for the QA movement, it doesn't get discussed because I think people feel that we have bigger fish to fry, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I don't really know, but I'm not saying that that topic isn't important, but others feel that no, this hadith, Quran thing, this thing needs to be addressed first, then we'll address the other things. And then some other people are, like yourself, are saying, this is even more, like at the root of all these issues is this one, so this should be taking priority. And I think what you're saying with that, I think that makes sense. I can see some logic there. But I think the main reason people are avoiding that topic is simply because it's going to rock the boat, and we already have so few people already in the QA movement. So rocking it anymore, when there are so many things that could rock it, people feel like that's not the brightest idea. And I can very much sympathize from where they're coming from.
Right. So the solution for some people is, let's just not talk about it. Let's avoid the conflict. And that's no way to build a society or a community.
Yeah.
It might work in a interim where you're just wanting to get together and have some sort of social interaction. You keep religion, politics, and gender out of things and out of the conversation. And then you have somewhat of a dialogue or interaction with other human beings. However, when you're trying to build a community from the ground up, we have to define and establish the fundamental protocols. And if we don't do that, when we arrive at that scenario, things are going to break far worse than if you had addressed it earlier. If things don't work out, they don't work out. But I believe in the human compassion and the human intellect. And if enough of us just put our minds together, I believe that most people are rational human beings and they just want to be fair and righteous and good. Because if we behave unrighteously and unfairly in this life, sooner or later we're going to come across that day when we cannot escape accountability. So as Allah mentions the hereafter, the day of judgment, Yawm ad-Din, that's a day we cannot escape. So if we were to establish something unjust and unfair, that's only going to bite us eventually. So I think that's a conversation that should be had sooner rather than later. So I invite the ladies, the women to also come on board and we can have a discussion on these things candidly, openly, and we'll try and run through the same types of protocols that we have discussed here about debates and discussions. I understand things get emotional. People bring in their own personal baggage, their own experiences, and the pain that they've suffered through their lives, and they bring it into the conversation. There's a concept called the mush separator. If you guys go online, look it up. Basically, it separates the emotion, and I don't mean separates meaning that it makes it emotionless. It addresses the emotion that people feel and puts it in its place so then we can still address it and still have a conversation. There are ways that we can get past these issues and have decent dialogue with each other. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Abdullah?
I think you summarized everything pretty well there. I think anything more I'd have to say would just be adding fluff. You got pretty straight to the point there. I guess if I were to add one thing, it would mostly be that, kind of like you're mentioning, bringing baggage in the situation. That's, I think, going to be the biggest roadblock because everyone has baggage, and then they like to project that baggage on everyone else,
Mm.
and that's not really the most productive thing. But that's just something we know that's going to happen. There's not really so much we can do. That's kind of something more the individual can only do.
It's a good point. So I'd like to bring on the podcast a good brother who's interacted with us, albeit sporadically, over the past few months. His moniker is Truth Matters. We'll ask him if it matters more than Black lives. Salamun alaikum, brother. Truth matters.
Walaikum assalam, brother Umar and Abdullah. Black Lives Matters, yeah, interesting one we had like 6 years ago.
So,
Yeah,
brother,
I loved your intro. I would suggest that I don't know how if you have prepared questions or what, but there's 2-3 things that you discussed, right? And I guess if we start there, it'll be very nice.
no,
Like
I'll
you discussed
actually,
women and you
yeah,
discussed helping society.
hmm So
So
typically, what we do is we bring in
yeah,
personalities in the Quran alone space, and we
uh-huh.
like to learn about their background first, their
Sure.
upbringing, journey to the Quran alone space. So, can
Yeah.
you share your background with us?
Okay, I don't have much of a complicated sort of a background. It's just that I was a Sunni born in Pakistan in Karachi and had been Sunni for 39 years, was not so much practicing, was very zealous about the Dajjal and the, end times, like how everybody is, yeah, because it's a very
Imran Hussain.
mystical. Yeah, Imran Hussain was a big thing. I used to listen to him a lot. And then my life was going downhill. I had health issues. I was living in London. Now United Kingdom, as you know, is a separate island on earth, right? So it's actually it's got a lot of moisture, a lot of different weather. I come from a dry place, so I got affected by a lot of the things which I wasn't aware of. And then my health actually went downhill. And then I had as I was a conspiracy theorist back in the day, so I was like, now that I'm getting unwell and I'm requiring medical assistance, so should I go for this method that they are providing, or should I do my own personal digging? And then I went down that route and became a herbalist. And from there on, the battle is on a daily basis. So what actually happened was that I was having a lot of problems. The solutions I was getting, they were very strange for the Muslims. So they were like, is this okay, is that all right, are these jinns, is this magic, blah blah blah, right? So I kind of got separate, and then in maybe October or November of 2023, I just made my final push. And along with another friend that was from Pakistan, and she was in Los Angeles, and we started talking on a daily basis on these matters. And then I started doing my research and then came across some channels on YouTube. And then from January 2024, I, not officially, but in my mind, in my heart, I was like, I am maybe just a Quran alone follower. Let me get into the Quran for the first time. So properly then is when I actually started looking at everything, and I was surprised and shocked that what kind of lies have been fed to us on a big mass level. And but the thing is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us very clearly in the Quran, everything is there right in front of us. We can't say on the last day that, oh Allah, I was listening to this man, that man. Allah will tell us, oh, that man and this man is already in a cage. Now we're talking about you. What did you do? So that's something that, basically religion actually sells us very easy kind of get out of jail cards. You have in Monopoly. So get out of jail cards, they sell us. But the Quran tells us there's no get out of jail card. You can be eternally free from the jail, but you have to act upon it, and you can let that jail be removed in this world and the next. Yeah.
I can 100% relate to that shock that you mentioned. I
Yeah.
experienced the same about 2 years ago. And when I had discussions with my family and friends, Alhamdulillah, the ones who were closest came on board. So it was very good.
MashaAllah.
So
Yeah.
both my boys and another family who's from, you know, one is from Karachi, another one's from Lahore, Multan area.
Okay.
So is the reason you don't display your image is out of fear of persecution?
That as well. But the thing is, my image is already on my channel. Yeah, my image is already there. But the thing is, what I consider more is that the message should be clear rather than who you are. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
People can also say, "Oh, this is AI," but if it's AI, it's a good version. Go for it.
It's a very good one, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of your thoughts on the topics that we've opened with today?
Okay, so regarding women, like you said, women are, to be supported by men. So
Hmm.
what I think is that that's a very correct thing. But in the Quran, if you look at it, there's levels, there's layers that you need to peel, and then when you keep peeling them, you come to a very different conclusion. So,
Hmm.
but in the beginning stages, you just look at a Rijal and a Nisa, right?
Right.
These are two different opposites. They're opposites
Okay.
basically. So what Rijal is the ones who are already, can take a responsibility on their shoulders. They're like the tanks, the tanks. But Anisa are the baggage. That's the baggage you're talking about, that they have to be carried around while you're traveling. So they need to be taken care of. So
Hmm.
let's go into the hadith, right? In the hadith, they tell us that uh, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salam, he had his first wife, who was
Hmm.
Khatija, and she was actually a Rijal in the community. She's the one who gave him a job. She's the one who, so that this concept actually kind of goes away, that women need to be, you will always be have to be cared for. No, that is like a very standard situation. But a woman can also be the head of state. She can do that if it comes
Okay.
to it.
So what you're saying then is the men do not need to care for the women.
I mean, the men have the ability and the testosterone to do so, and also in their, what do you call it, the way Allah has designed us, men have this feeling of superiority, or they have it, and you can't say that, oh, it's because of some kind of an ego issue. No, that's how we design. Just like how women, if you just tell them, oh, you look lovely or something, they automatically, something happens to them without their control.
Hmm.
So that's the way men are designed in a specific way as well. So men obviously are on the heavier weight. So yeah, they can take a lot of hardship, and they are supposed to be responsible. But it
So
goes both ways, I think
right.
so.
So
Yeah.
I'm a little bit unclear on what you're saying now. So are you saying that the Quran does not say for men to support women?
The Quran does tell men to support women, but you have to look into the greater context, as in what the ayat are. Because I don't take them very traditionally. That, oh, this is about a man and this is about a woman. Let's, okay. Can you open an ayah on screen, if you like, so we can discuss it.
Sure.
Bring a very decent discussion to it. So
Hmm.
ayah would be Surah Al-Baqarah chapter 2, ayah number 222. So are people watching? I don't even know how
Yeah,
many
yeah,
people
there
are
are
watching.
people
Yeah.
Oh,
watching.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, that's good. Okay. Look how the ayah starts. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa yas'alunaka anil mahidi. Okay.
Right.
Now the thing how it's starting is, it's about a question. It's about, oh, they questioned you or something like that, right?
Yeah, they ask you
And
about the
yeah.
Haid.
Okay, fine. Now the thing is, al-mahid, right, is
Yeah.
considered as female menstruation. Now,
Right.
the thing is, Arabic language, or lisanul Arab, the tongue of the Arabs or whatever, that language is so vast that it's got a ocean of knowledge in it, right? But how I see that, the traditionalists or the narrative builders have kind of, played around with it, is because the lexicons, when you go into this root, ha ya dad, right,
Hmm.
you only get 8 meanings. and
Okay.
all of them are about menstruation. One is about overflowing. Okay,
Okay.
something overflows.
That makes
So
sense. That's
it's
menstruation.
so I mean anything can overflow, but what I'm saying is that this word haid has been
Mm.
considered just to be this, as in like it's been forced, and not no other words appear in this root. Strangely, like Allah chose a word for us from a root which we don't use. You getting my point?
So you're saying that because they have constricted the meaning to the one
Yes,
word or one
yes,
meaning, so
yes.
you find that suspect.
No, no. I'll then the suspect comes now. Now
Okay.
the thing is, al mahid. Now everybody knows it's menstruation. Okay, so
Sure.
the Quran is supposed to be for the human and the jinn both, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Now I would ask these people who wrote these translations: have they met a jinn, female? Do they know that the jinn female has the same plumbing like the women of the humans?
Mhm.
Do the jinn female bleed? Do the jinn female bleed like that? How did they
Possible.
know? No, but then again, possible is not a very satisfying answer. Why? Because we are talking about guidance. We're
Now, one
talking about
second.
being
So
guided.
you're asking questions that don't have an answer, and then you're saying that that's not satisfactory. That doesn't make
No,
sense.
no. But what I'm trying to say is that have we actually like dig deeper into the
Yeah.
matter?
So let's say, for example, someone says, "Do you know how God created the universe?" And oh, you can't answer that, therefore, it's not what you think it is.
No, but God creating the universe does not give us a ruling about something. This is I'm talking about a ruling giving two men approaching their women while they're menstruating. You
Yeah,
hear what
but
I'm no I'm talking about.
you're taking the subject matter out of the context to something else, and then you're trying to say that because we can't answer that question,
Mhm.
therefore it doesn't mean this.
No, no. Look. Let's keep that aside for the moment. That what it means or what it doesn't. What
Okay.
I'm saying is that how the translations have been curated is
Hmm.
that they have given us like they've already assumed for the jinn in it. You know what I'm saying?
No, no, I understand what you're saying about that, but how are jinn related? There's only limited amount of information we have about the jinn,
No,
so
but
everything else is just in the realm of possibility.
do you believe that this is a guidance for them as well?
Um, the Quran is a guidance for the jinn as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to
Okay.
guide two groups in the same way.
No, but both the groups will have al Nisa in them.
It doesn't have to.
Oh, the jinn won't have females. How would they have their offsprings?
How does fire reproduce?
No, but do you believe that the jinn have offspring? Because the Quran talks about Iblis
Yeah,
and his skin, right?
and his offspring. It doesn't have to
Yes, yes.
be. I mean, offspring can also, as you mentioned, the words can have
What?
different meanings.
No, but are you saying that are they androgynous?
They could be.
That's
I
a
mean,
very good one
what I'm
because
saying
that's
is that
part of my research as well. But what I'm trying to bring to you, I hope you understand, is that look, there is the female, right? So the female is we know the female is almost in every creation except the androgynous things, right?
right.
Except the jellyfish that reproduces itself or doesn't die or something, like there
It
are
gets
some
younger
creatures.
and older, younger and
Yes,
older.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Just like the jinns. In traditional Islamic literature, the jinns are considered the same. That they, when they get old, they then get young again, and they only die accidentally. So that's why they live thousands of years. But anyways, so what
Why
I'm
are we
saying
even
is that
bringing up traditional?
I mean, just for references, just
Okay,
for
okay.
references to understand, because that's how our mind has been built up. Look,
Hmm.
if look, you know why this question is so invalid, which you just asked a little while ago, that oh, how did God create the universe?
Yeah.
We can't say that oh, God created the universe. How Ford Motors made the Ford. We can't say that. Why? Because nobody else has created humans or the creation or the universe ever. So don't have a reference point. So that question, whenever the atheists ask anybody that, oh, how did God did this? We can't say like that or like this because we don't
Hmm.
have a reference to it
Yeah,
because
you
that's the
can
only thing.
similarly say because we don't have the details about whether or not jinns are androgynous or whether or not they have females and they have
Mhm.
menses, you
Mhm.
can say that you're also taking the question into a realms of unknowability, and then you're using that as a justification to translate or understand, interpret this verse one way or the other.
Yeah, but what did you think of the whole picture that I put in front of you regarding this ayah?
I think that
Because look,
there's
in the
there's
traditional
worth looking
translation,
into. Yeah, go
they,
ahead.
in the traditional translation, they also write to Al Nisa, they write your wives.
Your vice.
Because they're trying to fit this thing there. Why? Because otherwise, how would menstruation work out in this ayah if it's not wives? Because it says
Oh, your wives.
it's An-Nisa. An-Nisa is not wives.
Your
An-Nisa
women.
is, yeah. So what women
So
are
wouldn't
these
that
which
be
are
would,
sorry?
wouldn't that be interpreted as well, like in the certain, maybe not in this context, but in a general
Yeah.
context when it's mentioning your women, wouldn't that also include your wives?
I
It could
mean, but
include it, but
your
it could be
woman would be your mother
daughters.
and your daughter
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
your sister as well. But what I'm saying is that in order to make their narrative, like in order to prove that this is menstruation, they would call An-Nisa wives as well. And that's what they've done in some translations. If you go on Quran.com on Sahih International, you'll
Hmm.
see that. It's written
I
there.
see. Okay.
Yeah, so why is that being done? Is because they want to create a ruling.
Do you think that it is possible for it to mean wives?
I mean, no, it's not, because in the Quran there's a word amra'akum for Lut's wife.
That's also women.
Nisa or Amra?
Amra can also be like a female.
No, but like is, look again, if I say that water is like milk, both are different. Both
Right?
are liquid, but both are
Hmm.
different. Both have their different densities, different composition.
Sure.
So when I say Anisa has Amra as well in it, and it can also, some people say Zawj is a wife,
Hmm.
but the word Zawj means pair. So
Right.
and like a negative can pair with a positive, just like a battery as well.
Hmm.
So these things are there. So the main purpose of them putting the word menstruation, I'm not saying what it means, I don't know right now, to be honest.
Hmm.
I'm doing my own digging, but it's something grander than just this mirrored thing that they said, oh, this is the women's waist for the month.
Yeah. So if it does, let's say go with this understanding. Haid
Mhm, mhm,
means mahid
mhm.
means menstruation.
Yeah.
What is objectionable about understanding it this way? They ask you about menstruation, say it is an impurity, or
Mm,
say it is a painful condition. So
mm,
keep away from women during it.
mm.
Seems like sound advice. What's wrong with that?
No, but you need to go into the greater context of everything. Like, for example, it could be something grand. It's also another point. It says Al Mahid. It doesn't say Mahid. It doesn't say Mahid. It says Al Mahid. It means
Yeah.
that specific one. That specific
No,
one.
it doesn't necessarily mean that. It
Look,
doesn't
it has
necessarily
a
mean
definite
that
article.
specific. I
It-
understand that. Al
yeah,
Mahid. They
yeah,
ask you about the menstruation.
yeah,
The
yeah.
menstruation in the Arabic language, it could mean general as well. It doesn't always, alif lam doesn't always have to mean,
But look, I'm
like,
sorry,
for
I
example,
respectfully disagree, because you're going with the traditional Arabic school of thought.
oh, I
Well, okay,
see.
look, I'll give you another example.
Okay,
In the
okay.
Quran, the word al malaika and
Yeah,
malaika both are present. Now tell me the
correct.
difference.
Right. So al malaika could be, like, for example, the malaika hood,
The malaika hood.
the angels, like
Okay,
the angel. Like if
okay.
you were to say the dog
Hmm.
has a canine teeth, it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be a specific dog.
No,
It
but
could just
that's
mean
you.
the
You said
dog
that in
hood,
English. You said
right?
that in English. You
Hmm.
just said that in English. But if you say in Arabic, it
Yeah,
has
like
to
for
be.
example, if you
Yeah.
were to say annas,
Hmm. Hmm.
the mankind,
Hmm.
or al insan,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it means the human being.
Hmm.
So it doesn't mean one human being. It can mean all human beings.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
لَقَدْ
That can be.
خَلَقَنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We have
Hmm.
created the human
Hmm.
with best of molds and the best of characters.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily mean one human being. It could mean the human being, meaning the humankind.
Hmm. Yeah, the humankind. That's how Al Insan. But if
That's
you're
correct.
mentioning Insan, one Insan, then you'll say Insan. You won't say Al Insan then.
No, that's what I was just mentioning right
Yeah,
now. That
yeah,
alif lam, the
yeah,
definite article, doesn't always mean one specific thing.
yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Well, in the Quran, it has to, because Allah is addressing us.
I just mentioned the verse of the Quran, al insan, and it doesn't mean one human.
Okay, then tell me why is the difference between al-malaika and malaika? Because there, I'm telling you, there's a different context going on entirely. Because look,
That's correct.
al-malaika is the malaika of Allah, and then there's a condition that in hell people will be sent with the state of a malaika, as in the resilience of a malaika, to take the fire and keep burning eternally. You getting my point? I
يوم
mean,
يقوم
this is my.
الروح والملائكة, right?
Mm-hmm,
يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة.
mm-hmm.
So then it's saying the soul and the malaika.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's, it doesn't mean specific necessarily. That's like referring to a plural, al malik or malaku. So then that's, those are all like I said, the context would tell you if it's specific one malaika, or
Mm-hmm,
it could mean a general malaika ship or malaika hood, the angels in totality, or it could mean, a angel, as you mentioned, without the definite article. It could mean any angel,
mm-hmm,
but the context does paint that picture. And in this context, al-muhid or
mm-hmm,
al-mahid, it
mm-hmm.
could just mean the menstruations. Just he says, they ask you about the menstruation.
Yeah.
So which one menstruation? They're asking about one menstruation. Is that what it
That's what
is?
I'm asking you now. Because look, like this is why what the Sunnis do. They try to tell Allah, "Oh Allah, you meant this, right? But you said that." Because
Um,
Allah is very precise. Quran is Arabi, meaning very clear to understand. But if we clarify and tune with it, that's the thing. I'm not saying I'm correct, man. But what I'm saying is when Allah says al, it has a different meaning. It has to be specific. He's telling us out of all the information, something specific, if you know what I mean. Because he knows everything.
no, I understand that part, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's what, when you said always, that's where I'm disagreeing with you. Is
No
that it
problem.
doesn't
We can
always
we can
mean that.
disagree. Obviously, that's how we learn, by
Yeah, yeah.
disagreeing and by coming to conclusions. Yeah, no problem.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
Inshallah.
yeah.
So,
But what my purpose was, that what how we started was that women, obviously they have a different life structure than us, slightly, than men. They can
mhm.
also come into the in powerful positions if they have to. We have examples in history like Boudica in Ireland, like Pullan Devi in India. Yeah, she was called the bandit queen, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So who was she? She proved it because she went through really hard shit.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah.
You have Jhansi Ki Rani, and you have all
Yeah.
these other.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. So you do have personalities in history that have exceeded their capabilities. You even have children who fought in wars. You have Osama bin Zaid, for example. The traditionalists tell us he was 12 years old when I'm sorry, he was 15 years old when he was engaged in the Battle of Hunain. And then he was 17 when the Prophet made him the commander in chief of the Islamic armies.
Yeah.
So they do have, exceptional cases,
I'll
but
give
you
you another
don't
one.
build
I'll
a
give you another
general
one.
rule based on that.
You
Yeah.
know Muhammad bin Qasim. Muhammad
Hmm.
bin Qasim, the guy who entered Sindh, and that's why Pakistan and India has Muslims,
Right.
according to it mainstream traditional whatever. Yeah. Second point that I felt like talking about was that charity
Uh-huh.
should not be as traditional, that how we do, like we go give charities and people are still poor.
Right.
How I think, I'm not sure if the Quran has the exact template of this, but how
Hmm.
what I think is that if there's 10 people, okay, you go assess them and you pick one, make that Nisaa a Rijal, and then you are two Rijals then. And then one by one,
I
all
see.
of them will become a Rijal, and then
So
and that's
you're
how it's
still
supposed to be.
operating under that definition of Rijal and Nisa being not female and male, but rather being powerful and weaker.
Yeah, because look, you spoke to Musa, PhD, right? Al
Yeah,
Moses. He has
that's his
got the
point of
same.
view.
Yeah, he's got the same because that's how it works.
Right. No, no,
Yeah,
I questioned him about his point of view and where he's
yeah,
coming from.
yeah, yeah.
And I also mentioned in that same podcast that I don't agree with that. I mean, I don't
Mm,
see that as that. I mean, if you are only going to generalize it that way,
mm,
then what you're saying is, uh, in the Quran, there is no explicit instructions for the
mm,
man to be the caretaker of the woman. The
mm,
man can simply say,
mm,
I'm a Nisa, at any point. He can just say, you know what, I just don't feel like I want to do anything,
Do you
and
know
just make
this?
himself weaker voluntarily, and then he doesn't have to take care of her.
I mean, there's a term in India or Pakistan, ghar jamai, which means that
Tarjamai,
you are just
exactly.
sitting home and your wife is the man. She's going
Breadwinner,
working and you're taking care of the kids and stuff.
right?
So it could be laziness. It could be maybe the woman is like too much estrogen,
Hmm.
and like all of these things can happen.
No, no, I
Yeah,
understand what you're saying. That does happen. My point is, then what you're saying is that the Quran is not instructing the
yeah.
men to take care of the women. It's
No,
no
no,
longer an
I
obligation.
didn't say that. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that when you start look 2 3 years ago when I got into this journey, I was having these same ideas. I used to listen to those guys that still do their weekly podcast live streams, and they're still bashing that dead horse called Sunnism, and they're still talking about their same thing. Actually, what they're doing is they're just not being a Sunni, but they
Hmm.
have all I mean more than half of the Sunni things in their system, and they say we're Quran alone, and they're following the same. Look, the thing is the translations are based upon historical events, because
Hmm.
behind a translation there's a big tafsir going on. That tafsir comes from history.
Sure.
So if you can't let go of that, how can you let go of what you left, basically?
No, I understand that they
Yeah.
may have flaws in the way that they are translating things, but
Mm,
that's not necessary. I mean, that would be a straw man argument to say that
yeah.
because they use wrong interpretations, that
Hmm.
means everything they interpret is wrong. That
No,
that
it's not about everything. It's about look. It's about look. Okay, there's an ayah from Surah number 6, 116, which says that if you follow the majority of the world, they will lead you
Sure.
astray. You know about that, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so when I take it to the traditional Muslims, and they're like, "Oh, we're not the majority. We're Muslims. We're oppressed." I'm like, "Listen, you guys are 2 billion out of the 8 billion alleged population of the world, right?"
Not
They
just
said,
that, in Pakistan, you're the
"Yeah."
majority.
Exactly, exactly. So the thing is, then this ayah fits on them. Then they're like, no, no, according to tafsir, this is about this. What BS? Come on, let's be
Right.
straight. Come on,
Yeah, but neither
Yeah,
one of us is doing that. Neither one of us is referring to tafsir in any way.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
But the point that I'm making is that if we were to discuss, let's say, something that is fair and equitable,
Mm,
let's say you're talking about men and the women and the men and women dynamic
yeah,
in a relationship, and
yeah.
as I mentioned, let's take religion out of it. Any
Mm,
religion, any scripture, any
mm,
culture,
mm,
we put it on the side.
yeah.
And what should be the agreement between the male and the female,
Mm,
objectively speaking, pragmatically speaking?
mm,
So if they're living as roommates,
mm,
then you understand this is my room, that's your room. Here's the
yeah.
common areas. We try to keep the common areas fairly clean. And if
Mm,
you have any of your junk that you want to have it in your room,
mm,
right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's fairly straightforward.
I mean,
Um,
you're talking about a very ideal girlfriend-boyfriend relationship in the
no,
Western
no,
world.
I'm talking about a roommate
No,
situation, not
no,
even a
but
girlfriend.
I'm being very frank. Why? Because look, you need to understand another thing. I'm gonna say this next thing, you're gonna disagree as well. There is no marriage concepts in the Quran. But you'd be like, what about nikah and ankihu? But these are broad, big terms, man. Why do you think? Do you think like people have this idea that Allah is like a matchmaker or Allah is like a judge who's sitting there giving us rulings on a daily basis? Allah has given us the whole instruction set in a book for everything, almost whatever that you can make your head go round.
Hmm.
But we are sadly, because of our traditional programming and how the world operates, we're stuck on those little narrow alleys still.
Right.
Yeah.
Anwar Sheikh over here says in Arabic grammar, the definite article al
Mm,
prefixed to a singular or mass noun does not
mm.
make it an item. Instead, it refers to the entire genus, category, or universal collection.
Okay. Yeah, fair
So
enough.
that's what I was
Yeah.
talking about earlier. And even aside, like what you just now mentioned about nikah, I haven't
Mm,
even gotten to that point yet. I'm
mm,
just doing a
Also,
thought. Yeah, go ahead.
there's one thing I wanted to add also about you mentioning traditional programming.
mm,
Within different cultures, there are some things that cultures implement that are pretty extreme. I'm sure you're familiar with some more tribal cultures where they add piercings in places they maybe shouldn't and elongate their necks or
mm,
whatever.
mm, mm,
That might be a bit extreme. Though majority of the things that every culture comes up with typically has a purpose. So many of the traditional cultures and customs that arise as humans create civilization didn't just arise because some people came together like, let's make up some rules for people to follow. They came up because people act certain ways, and the ways people act affect everyone in the society, and in order to mitigate the damages caused by how people act, people made traditions like, okay, you can't do this because if everyone's doing it, then it's going to ruin the trust in the society. It's going to ruin the safety in society. It's going to have different issues. So, like an example would be one thing that's pushed in the Hadith that isn't in the Quran is the concept of men and women touching. Now, for someone to say if they're not mahram, then you can't touch them like whatsoever. That's not the Quran doesn't say that. But at the same time, I can understand why hadithists made such scripture saying men, women can't touch, because there are some people who go to the opposite extreme and are like, oh, we're the Quran doesn't say we can't touch this way. This isn't like, sexual or anything. This is completely
mm.
halal. And then pushing the edge. And they're like, okay, we can't just say you can't do this because this is like indecent. We're just gonna say the Prophet did it. So
Mhm.
the reason why people are making such traditions are because the traditions are just reflections of how humans behave, and without such traditions,
Mm.
then human behavior is harder to mitigate. If that makes sense.
Okay, have you heard of the Monarch project, Project Monarch?
Is
Yeah,
that
I
like a
think I have.
butterfly or a moth?
Yeah. Do you know about what a monarch butterfly is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
the orange one.
So basically, the monarch butterfly, it every year, the let's say, if um, one particular butterfly has taken off from Mexico or from South America in order to migrate all the way to Canada, that generation doesn't get there. It's the third one from them, so they all keep flying. So
Wow.
the programming stays in them in three generations. That's how human beings have been subconsciously programmed by this. Well, this goes into conspiracies. When you said that, oh, human beings have to act in a certain way, look, everything has to have an origin story. Even the word origin, the word jinn is there, because the jinns were the original ones, the first ones here.
Hmm.
Okay. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that if anything happens and some sort of a story is given or some sort of a rebuttal sort of a situation is created in order to handle or tackle that, that is all done due to a psychological need. Human beings are programmed from generation to generation. There are some goats in America, and I was listening to a farmer, and he said these goats have forgotten what their grandparents, what plants they used to eat, and somehow we are bringing them back to the plants they should be eating, what their ancestors were eating. So it all happens because of programming. So when people are, and also look, like when you said about touching, think about it. If somebody living in the the Inuits living in the igloos on the North Pole somewhere, right? They never got the Quran, right? But they have a decency factor in the community. They're like, okay, this guy's like, hey, if you touch my sister, I'm gonna kill you. Like simply, like they can say that. Why? Because he doesn't feel like it. But the other guy can't be like, oh, can I touch her this much or that much or not that much? That can't be done. It's like something that's already in your head, in your programming, in your fitra.
Hmm.
So the Quran doesn't need to tell us that, oh, go, don't do this and that. Like, for example, the does the Quran need, does Allah need to tell us that after using the toilet you need to clean, or is it in our fitra to do so? You getting my point?
Right.
So all these, when they say, look, the problem is religion and these religious labels have minimized the Quran to such an animalistic level that we think that, oh, this is all about it. But I tell you, the Quran is about a big, greater picture, which is about to come to us in the future, inshallah.
Right.
Yeah,
I got that, inshallah.
yeah, yeah.
But so going back to the initial question that I was asking,
Mm,
if you were to take out religion and culture,
yeah.
and if you were to say that roommate situation, male, female roommate, or two male roommates, what would be the rules that would fall into place more or less? And I've been in roommate situations many years in my life, so
Same here. Same here.
there hasn't even been a need to really define a lot of these rules. It kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah.
BB's saying guest is absolutely accurate. Awesome. Narrow-minded,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah, narrow-minded readers are looking for base definitions on daily living. To the contrary, Quran discusses stronger segments of society, treating Nisaa, weaker resourceless, with justice. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, so I appreciate that camp who sees it that way. I don't agree with it, but that doesn't mean we have to fight over it.
I
That's
mean, look, let's
perfectly
let's
fine.
let's bring it this way. It all comes down to human psychology.
Hmm.
Something like, let's say, something that benefits my livelihood or my psychology or my environment, I will be up for it. But if something doesn't matter, or I perceive it not that it's not mattering, I won't even care about it.
Right, right.
So it all comes to that level.
So back to that question, what would you think would be the rights and responsibility of two roommates?
Just to look, that boils down to the baseline question, which everybody asked me, that okay, if you're a Muslim and but you've denounced religion, what Muslim are you? Then I tell them the Muslim simply means that you stay peaceful, I give you peace, we live harmoniously, and I'm not afraid of anything. That's the end of my definition of Islam.
I'm not asking about Islam.
Yeah, no, but then in the roommate situation, that's what
Yeah.
you're practicing. You practice Islam. You respect their boundaries, and they should respect your boundaries. You shouldn't be afraid of them or any
Okay.
external forces.
All right. So, and then let's say that one of these roommates is a female, and then the two want to get married. Now, what are the rights and responsibilities of each over the other?
I think they should be the same. Like, okay, let's say for instance, these two just got to know each other and haven't been a girlfriend boyfriend, and then they decide to get married and stuff, right? What will be the rights and responsibilities? The rights and responsibilities would be the same as any responsible husband all over the world, and of the responsible wife all over the world. Now, but then you'd say that, oh, they all have different cultural things. I'm talking about baseline things. Has my husband eaten? Is he well? Do I need to wash him clothes if he's busy? Husband is like, do I need to take care of, like, keep the house clean? Do I have to work responsibly? You bring the money in the house, make sure everything's okay, we are well planned, we are stocked up. What else?
So you're saying that there's no guarantee from either party that they have to take care of the other.
Guarantee, it all comes down to their heart. If, like, let's say I didn't go do a nikah and I'm living in a relationship, opposing to I did a nikah. If I did a nikah, who's gonna grab us, who's gonna hook us? Allah? No, that's just a psychological thing that, oh, I've done a nikah, and yeah, that's even people don't do nikah, governments are involved, they bring in the lawyers for their rights. Why isn't the government doing it? Because they have to bring their own things in it. You getting my point?
I mean, you can argue against the why does government do anything? For them, it's just a matter
I
of
mean,
control.
the government is like a father and a god. To be honest, it's another ilah, basically.
That's true. Yeah, they just want to have more control over the people, and so that's the only thing they're interested in. So whatever rules and regulations they pass would be in favor of them having more control. So if you want to get married, you want to get divorced, you want to have any decision making, government wants a seat.
Look,
You know.
see, simple as that. In the Quran, everything is halal until mentioned,
Okay.
and in the Hadith, everything is haram until discovered halal.
Okay.
So it's just the whole mirror effect, basically.
Right. Right.
The
So
Hadith actually makes you go into a state that, in an OCD kind of a state, that you're like, oh, should I do this? Should I ask them this, that? And in the Quran, you just use your intuition and Allah guides you. You just have to be aligned with Allah. That's all it needs.
okay.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is whatever's generally accepted around the world and culture to culture, those things vary quite drastically.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you were to say you're been brought up in Pakistan or one of the Arab countries, and then your wife goes and kisses a guy on his cheek and puts his arms around her. I mean, all this stuff. You'd be like ready, like you said, you'd be ready to kill the other person.
Look, I'll give you a very plain example. Let's say I get married to a white woman, a British white woman, right?
Hmm.
And I tell her, listen, okay, fine, you're wherever you are, you know your limits. Okay, you're being friend. They have a, over here there's a custom, they kiss each other on the cheeks and stuff, just for being friendly and warming
Yeah,
up. That's it,
sure.
nothing else, right? There's no sexual intention involved. But then the husband would be like, oh, you're piercing my heart, you're like, obviously. So you can tell her, look, I don't accept this. She
Mm.
has to then agree. This is part of the contract. That's why nikah is a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Look, companies get married, you have heard that.
Mergers and acquisitions. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
so what is that? Well, they're not having sexual intercourse or something, no.
Right.
But if you go into the Arabic dictionary, nikah only means sexual intercourse. Again, just like al-mahid, what's the point of this?
Mm-hmm.
Forcefully,
No,
they're
I
like,
don't know if it means only that. I mean, there is aqd, which is a part of the nikah according to
aqad
some.
means bind. It's like a knot,
Right.
tying the knot.
Right, but that's
Yeah.
also a contract.
No, aqad is a different thing. Look, I can come and tie you up without your
Mm-hmm.
consent. Yeah, but if you're doing a nikah, I need your consent.
Mm-hmm.
Aqad and nikah have these kind of differences.
I see. I see.
That's why in the Surah Falaq,
Mm-hmm.
it talks about uqad.
Mm-hmm.
The uqad the shaitan does on you without you even knowing.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Hmm.
So, as far as the actual nikah is concerned, you don't believe it is talking about a marriage.
I mean, this whole marriage system, whatever my parents did, whatever my brother did, and all of that, that's just the formality, the worldly
Mm.
formality. I mean, and also then again, you'll be like, oh, does talaq mean divorce? Talaq
Good question.
means way beyond. Look, when you accept in your mind that this thing can go beyond, everything will start going beyond. It's just like we are putting boundaries on our own intellect.
Mm.
Because look, let's put it very frankly, okay? Every human being has this subconscious mind which is a people pleaser, and it
Mhm.
does it. Why? Because it wants to survive in the environment and be accepted. That's why everybody is like, what do you think? Leave what he thinks. What do you think? You're living your life, but everybody's like, oh, if I do such, like, let's say tomorrow, if you dye your hair pink,
Mhm.
they'll kick you out of the house. They'll be like, whoa, whoa, like you'll be like, whoa, what happened? So you can't do that. Why? Because you want to be accepted in society. So it all boils down to the subconscious mind and the discerner and the people pleaser. The
Okay.
difference. Yeah.
Let's say, for example, you have an ancient situation where all the things that you just now mentioned about what is Islam, what is Nisaa, Rijaal, all these concepts are being understood by the majority of the people in the village, right?
Hmm.
And then you have other villages around there
Hmm.
who have a more hardcore kind of a view, more cultist kind of a mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a balance between you having let's say, the educated or a higher elevated level of thought, and the fact that the cultist kind of a mindset will end up destroying you? Like they'll become stronger than you, and in the span of time, just the survival of the fittest or natural selection, the people with your kind of thoughts are going to get wiped out. So what's the point of even having that type of a ideology when sooner or later
Yeah.
the people with the other ideology are going to amass in numbers and
Mm.
wipe you out?
Well, we go back to Surah 6, Ayah 116. Even if they wipe us out here, Allah will wipe them out there. And then again, you don't want to be in the majority. You just said that we'll get wiped out. Isn't that what's happening to the Quran alone people as well, in a sense?
Yeah. So
Yes.
it's talking about in a sense where like you can interpret that same verse that you mentioned, Surah
Mm.
6116,
Yeah.
as that Allah is talking to the people at that time. It doesn't necessarily mean for future, or
But
if
this
you
is an
if you
assumption.
had listened. I mean, it's not an assumption. I'm
Mm.
saying the possibility exists that it's
How?
talking about only to that time frame, the
Okay.
people who are being communicated to, and situations can change. It's possible that the majority of the people may become righteous. So it's not a prediction necessarily of the future. It's if
No,
you
but
listen to the majority of the people, they
yeah.
will misguide you. It's in the present tense. It's not in the future tense.
Mm.
So that could be argued, is what I'm saying. The possibility exists because that's a very fatalist kind of a view that we're always going to be the minorities right. It's kind of the same argument that the Sunnis are making
Yeah.
through their hadith interpretation, that the Prophet said that my ummah will never be in misguidance.
Mm.
Therefore, the majority is always going to be in guidance. That's
No,
their
but
interpretation.
that goes against to the ayah entirely.
No. The ayah says if you listen to majority of the nas, the
Yeah.
people,
Hmm.
they're going to claim the majority of the people are not necessarily Muslims. Muslims are still in the minority when you look at the majority of the people. So therefore, they'll reconcile it by saying that in the Quran is talking about the majority of the people, as in
Yeah.
all of human beings, and the
Mm.
Hadith is talking about if you Hadith is talking about my ummah, which
Mm.
is the Muslim nation.
Mm.
So there is no contradiction, and they
Yeah.
can both be correct.
The whole
I
answer
think
is in
a
the
good
ayah
rebuttal,
because
a good
sorry, one
rebuttal
second.
to that though
The,
would
the
be
whole
okay. Go ahead.
okay, go on. Sorry. So you go on. You go on. Go on.
Yeah. A good rebuttal to that would simply be that if you're living on an island with like 100 people, it doesn't matter
Mm.
what the majority of humanity thinks about whatever. All
Mm.
that matters to you is what practically you can interact with, which would be that 100 people, and that's kind of all there is to it.
So
That
now you're
if
actually creating a hypothetical to constrain the meaning.
Mm.
So that island can be
uh,
created only in Karachi, only in
Mm.
Lahore, or only in specific areas.
Mm.
So there's no limit to that. We're living in a global village today, which you
Yeah.
can argue it's the entire world is the island.
I don't think you can argue that
Yeah,
because
you could.
it's if you
There's
can't
like all of
no
the
okay,
transportation, airplanes, ships, and all that stuff has made it so convenient
Mm.
that you can go to any part of the world faster than what people would have traveled from Mecca to Medina back in those days.
you can go to any part of the world if you're a very small part of the percentage of the world. The majority of the world can't have that luxury. They're
Mm.
constrained to their surroundings. Just
Yeah.
like not just that, but also that's an insanely recent development in history.
Right.
Mm.
So that
Look,
goes back to the point about Allah referring to specific people at specific times.
no, but also at the end of the ayah, it says that they are assuming they're illa zan, right?
Right.
So the assumption that what you just said, that the Sunnis are assuming them to be majority and stuff, that whole stuff is in the ayah. It's there. Allah is telling us why don't follow the majority, because they're doing assumptions, and that's what happens mostly is when, because of these assumptions that they have, they've made their own systems, and
So
Allah's told us straight up, don't follow that, don't need to.
um, yeah, like it's again that can also be argued about the time frame that and I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, where
Hmm. Hmm.
these are the things that the Sunnis will come back with, or
Yeah.
sectarians would. So BB is saying nikah ankihu
Mm.
is normally translated as marriage contract or marriage agreement, which is not the only meaning as per Quran.
Correct. Yeah.
It is used to in the general sense of entering into any important and long-term contract or agreement which documents or mentions the binding terms. That's an interesting point of view. So, as we were saying before, if they wanted to reconcile the two, they'll say that the Quran is talking about the nas, meaning people, and
Mm.
the Prophet is talking about my ummah, meaning Muslims.
Mm.
And so, therefore, the two are not contradicting each other, and the ummah, meaning the majority of the Muslims, will be on the right, but the majority of human beings will be on the wrong.
Mm.
That's the the rebuttal that you're going to get from them.
Yeah,
But
I keep getting these rebuttals from them every now and then. But that's the thing. Look, everybody's responsible for themselves. They want to think whatever, they can have it. You know, it all look the thing is people forget it that on the last day when you're facing Allah for the questioning, you are there alone. Whoever that you think take as a support over here in the world, they won't be there.
right, that goes without saying.
Yeah,
That's correct. But
yeah.
the question that I was asking you was about your concept of that.
Hmm.
So if you're giving the argument that the majority will always be wrong, or majority, they're going to say the majority is right, meaning the Muslims are always going to be right, the
Hmm.
majority of the Muslims, and then the counter to that is majority of the people are always going to be wrong.
Hmm.
That I think both of those are kind of taking a harder stance than what the verse is actually saying.
Look, let's make it simple. The Muslims are considered 2 billion out of the 8 billion population, right?
Hmm.
That makes them a quarter of the population. That brings them in the majority. They're not a minority. They're not 100,000, you know? They're 2 billion. They're part of the majority. Simple as that.
You're saying they're a significant majority, but like the verse is not saying it that way, right? It's saying if you listen to the akthara min nas, so if you listen to the majority of the
Of the
people
masses, of the
of the
masses, yeah.
people,
Yeah.
so then in that sense they have an argument to say that among the world, the nas includes all people. Among
Mhm.
that, 2 billion of us is only a quarter. We're still
I
the
Mhm.
think that would be
minority.
a really silly thing to posit because at the end of the day, if you're not interacting with that extra, like if they either were to, if you're not interacting with those people, they might as well not even exist. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So
Mhm.
they're if they're not in your in area of influence, then I don't think that has anything to do with it if they would count as the people. Because if you're going to some random tribal village or some tribal city in like the ancient world, you're not gonna be like, oh yeah, the people also include the Aztecs and the Mayas and the ancient Chinese. And also, like,
Mhm.
they don't even have a concept of what that is, so it's pointless to even mention that. Only until insanely recently in history or do we even have a concept of that there's other cultures that are like this close around and that they have these beliefs. Even then, like the average person doesn't know anything about that stuff. So I think that's primarily talking about what actually is practical, which is the majority of the people around your area of influence
Okay, so
or
that
what you can
brings
reach
up
out to. Maybe
two further
one thing I want to
issues.
add. One thing I want to add is that maybe for us, when since we're so interconnected, maybe for us, then it's maybe like the majority of people in the world. But
Exactly,
for
because
someone
now
who's
we
yeah,
can't bring those examples from the past because we are all interconnected. You're sitting in America, I'm in the UK right now.
hmm
You know,
Yeah,
we're
that's
connected.
that's what I'm saying. So that's
Yeah.
it poses those two additional problems, because now you're saying insanely recent,
Hmm.
it means different from what used to be before. So
Hmm.
therefore that verse is not referring to us.
No, the majorities are always present. You
No,
can't
I'm
say that the
talking
verse
about
doesn't
when you say it's insanely recent,
Mhm.
that poses that problem now.
Yeah. No,
If
but
you're
what I'm
making a
saying, look,
special pleading for what's going on now, then you're saying that verse doesn't apply then.
look, for instance, this ayah, okay, like how your son said, the island situation. Now, on the island, they don't know that the whole world population is 8 billion. They just think that there are only 100 of them. So, in those 100, whatever the majority is, Allah is talking about that for that person. It is, this goes for everybody in a different way, in different contexts. Majorities could be in anything, not only people. Could be in anything, could be concepts, could be school of thoughts, could be ideologies, could be
Okay.
systems.
So in
Yeah.
that case, what you said earlier about what is generally understood is going to be wrong.
Allah said that, look, Allah has also told us in the Quran that a lot of the Muslimin are the mushrikeen.
No,
That
no.
ayah is there. Okay.
I'm dealing with what you said earlier. That you said when I
Yeah.
asked you about what would the roommate situation be, what is the marriage situation, you said was
Yeah.
generally established. What's generally established is by the
Yeah. No,
majority.
no. But the general establishment, I mean, like for instance, if you eat your food from your right hand or your left hand, does Allah, it doesn't matter to Allah or not?
Yeah, there's no specification in
Oh,
the
okay,
Quran
good,
about
good.
that.
So that those are the general things that they can accept. Now, for instance, the woman says that, oh, in my culture, whenever the husband comes and enters the door, we give him 3 slaps.
Right,
Okay, so the husband can be like, I don't want to agree with, I don't go with that.
right.
That's a mutual understanding they need to have, even if it's something sacred to
Brother,
that lady.
you're addressing a question that I'm not asking about. You said earlier that
Yeah.
when I was asking about the roommate or the nikah situation, you
Hmm.
were saying that the what is generally established is
Yeah.
what we would go with. What's
Okay.
generally established is
Okay.
the majority.
Let's define the general establishment I'm on about. I'm talking
Yeah,
about being a human, as in whatever human beings are. You know that humans eat. You know that humans need hygiene. They need enjoyment, entertainment, education, all of that. Talking about those things, like
yeah, but
things that are
that's just digging the
established.
argument further because
Okay.
then
Keep
that's
on.
again akthar min nas. That's the majority of the people. They're
So,
going to be
okay.
wrong no matter what they establish.
What is your point out of this? I would like to
My
know.
point is that when you look at that verse,
Hmm.
you, it looks to me like you're using that verse
Hmm.
too broadly to refer to, like, everybody throughout time, every
Hmm.
culture, every
Hmm.
place.
Hmm.
Its majority is always going to be wrong about everything. That
I
doesn't make
mean, I
sense.
mean, does this ayah specify a time zone or a race of people or a community?
It doesn't. Very good question. It doesn't specify a community or an island or a country or
There
anything
you
either.
go. There you go. It's
So
it's
that
it's timeless. The
so
Quran is
no,
timeless, brother.
no. What I'm saying, so these two arguments kind of contradict each other. If you're gonna say island, people didn't know about the Aztecs, etc., and then when we're talking about time, you're gonna say, well, it doesn't specify time. It doesn't specify location either,
Hmm.
or any kind of border.
Hmm.
So then you can't cherry pick. You can't say, well, here we're gonna
No.
say we're gonna look for what it specifies, and
Yeah.
when it doesn't suit me, we're just
Mm.
gonna look at anything.
No. Basically, what you're saying is that it has to be uniformly applied to everything, right?
Yeah, either
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
or you should also leave the door open for the possibility that it is talking contextually to a
Mm.
people that doesn't even need to be qualified,
Huh.
because where do you understand that the Quran is being revealed through the Prophet to a certain
Okay.
group of people?
Mm.
Because when Allah says, Yes, alunaka anisa, they
Mm.
ask you about the hour.
Mm.
Is Allah talking about me and you?
Mm.
No, He's talking about the people around the Prophet Muhammad who
Mm.
asked him about that.
Mm.
So that specific context is already painted.
Okay, but I want to ask you something. Has that thing already happened?
What thing?
This thing that you said that they ask you about the hour.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Has it?
They
Are you
already asked
sure?
him, right?
Are you sure?
Um,
Because for
and
Allah,
if it
everything is in
hasn't
the past.
happened, then why is he saying they ask you about this?
Because for Allah, everything has happened already.
Okay, but
Allah
that's
is
not.
beyond time and space.
He's not
Allah is
revealing
telling
this
us,
from
yeah.
his own point of view. He's not revealing it to himself. He's
Hmm.
revealing it to us. So he's
Yeah.
not going to be revealing it from his point of view. He's going to
Yeah.
be revealing it from our point of view.
Yeah. Okay. So the ayah is about they ask you. So
Yeah.
has that question been asked already, or it will be asked in the future? That's my question.
Um, if,
Because for
for
Allah,
example,
everything has happened, right? You know
no,
that,
no.
right?
Again, you're just repeating the same thing. So for him, it's already happened. Is irrelevant because he's revealing that to the Prophet Muhammad and to us or to his group at that time.
Hmm.
So what his point of view, he's not revealing the scripture for himself.
Hmm.
Therefore, what he knows or everything in the past for him is not relevant. So what would be relevant is the people who are hearing this or receiving this message.
Yeah.
So for them, it would be, yeah, they already asked him. Otherwise, like, what is Allah talking about? They ask you about the hour.
Hmm.
When is it going to come?
Hmm.
Right? They ask you about khamr wa maisar.
Hmm.
They ask you about alcohol and gambling. Or
Okay. From this same point, I would like to ask you. You know, Surah Al-Qamar, ayah number 1,
okay,
the
that's
moon.
about yeah, the splitting of the moon. Sure,
Yeah.
shaq al
Yeah.
qamar.
So what do you think? Has that happened?
No, I mean it hasn't happened. No, I think it's
No,
about the
but
future.
over there, it's also saying the moon has split.
Right.
It is saying that it has happened.
That's
Has
correct.
it happened for us?
That again, you're using two separate, completely different
No, it's the
contexts.
same thing. I'm talking
It's
about
not the same context.
no, it's a talking about an event. You're
Right.
talking about an event. I'm talking about an event. The language being used in the Quran is, the Quran says the moon is split, the hour has come near and the moon is split. Okay?
That's there you go. So the hour is
Huh?
talking about the time,
Yes.
right?
What time is
So
that? Has that time come already, or will it come?
it will come in the future.
It will
That's what
come.
it's
So
talking
how
about.
can you say that that thing has happened in the past? How are you sure of that?
That's what I'm saying. The context paints that picture, right?
What's the context?
See, so
The
if you look at
context
the
comes
second
comes from
verse,
our
the,
historical understanding.
no. The second verse says, when
Yeah.
these people see a sign,
Can you
they
tell me
turn
the
away.
number of the ayah so I can open it over here, please? Thank you.
54:2. I can
Okay,
share the
sure.
screen.
Yeah, yeah. Do that if you can. Yeah, yeah. It'll make it easier for us and the audience,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
because it's a very profound thing that we're discussing over here, indeed.
52. Yeah.
Okay,
So
and if
here, the
yeah,
hour has drawn near and the moon
mm-hmm,
is split.
mm-hmm. So look.
اقرب لك
It is telling us as if it has happened, right?
Right.
Yeah, but it hasn't for us. But
Yeah,
for
that's
the
correct.
For the Sunnis, it has.
Yeah, for the Sunnis it has. But
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
talking about like the Quran does have that language
yeah, yeah.
where it would use the past, present, and future
Mm.
interchangeably based on the context.
Okay, tell me
But
something. Will Allah, the author of the Quran, the creator of the universe and everything, will he be precise, or will he be like, would he confuse his audience?
I don't think it's a matter of confusion. I
No,
think
no.
it's a
I'm just
matter
saying
of
that.
understanding.
But the Quran, in chapter 12, ayah 2, the Quran, it says the Quran is Arabiyun, la'allakum ta'qilun, so you can reason.
That's
Now,
correct.
Arabi, is that talking about a language, or is it talking about clarity?
I think it is clarity, the fine tuning
Yes, yes,
of the language.
yes.
Yeah.
So then, if we are getting weird ideas out of the clarity, that means we are not clear. The text is clear.
Hmm.
Our perception has to be shaped and molded accordingly.
Okay.
It's all because of perception that we come to these blocks, you know. But look, I
Right.
understand the point you're bringing is a very solid point, that when that language, sorry, when that language is being used,
Hmm.
then then how can it be in the future? But then again, the same kind of language is here.
But it's not
54.
the same kind of language. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, show me
So
the other ayah. No, we'll see what kind of
yeah,
language is it.
yeah.
We'll
We'll,
just see
we'll
it right
take a
now.
look at that.
Yeah,
So the other one was, I'm gonna pull it up. Um, right.
yeah.
Alcohol and Surah Baqarah, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Ayah number.
1 second. I'm gonna put this in a separate tab. That way I don't lose this spot.
Mm-hmm.
219.
2219.
219.
Okay.
Okay.
Yas'alunaka anil khamri wal maisir.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
219. And then, so he's telling him how to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
how's that? He's talking about they will ask you. He's talking about that's something they ask you,
Mm.
and Allah is saying to respond to that. So that's still within the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, yeah. Because the
Versus,
statement is there. Say this.
yeah,
Allah is telling the Nabi to say this.
that's correct.
Yeah,
So
but over
that's
here
what
it's
I
not
mean.
like that.
Here it's not like that. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. So yeah, some clarity is there, obviously, in order for us to be certain how it would have been.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Do you
So
want to
it's
shift gears to any other topics? Because
yeah,
there's so
brother.
many.
There's so
Yeah.
many topics to cover.
Go on, go on, go on.
So your understanding of the community building itself.
Hmm.
Let's say, for example, we all become kind of hermit-like, where
Hmm.
we take our understanding and we retreat into, you know, whatever places that we're living in, and
Hmm.
we separate ourselves from society. Is there any kind of pushback that we can do against the direction that the world is moving towards?
Well, all you can look the. I mean, everybody will give their view. So I'm a bit different. So I'll give you my view.
Uh-huh.
As the hour is close and it's apocalyptic times, right? People want to make societies. My brother, mashallah, he had a son last month, and I said congratulations. And I was thinking, when the apocalypse comes, is he going to be running with a baby in his hand when he has to take action? Will he be, is just overburdening them? People are overburdening themselves with worries and responsibilities. So what I'm saying is that yes, if you are a person who can stay in society and you can do saum, as in refrain, yeah, saum
Mhm.
from the things that you should refrain, then stay in society. But if you can't stay in society, and if it's crucial for you to be on your own and figure things out that way, do that. Everybody has a different path. But generally, I would say staying away from all this modernity is better for us. Is better for us.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what about, you know, about homesteading?
Homesteading, can you define that, please, for me?
So in the US, there are a whole bunch of people who
Hmm.
call themselves homesteaders.
Okay.
Basically, they want to get a piece of land, build a
Oh, I
house,
got it. I
have
got it. I got it.
animals,
Off grid kind of stuff.
off-gridders you can call. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So so there are lots, are there a lot of people in UK like that?
I mean, in UK we have got a little bit of communities, but they're like morely like private communities as such. But
Okay.
regarding the Quran alone, I don't know if there's anything right now because people are just all scattered all over. You know.
Right. No, I don't mean particularly Quran alone.
Hmm.
That's something that I've been thinking about in the recent months.
Yeah.
That people say with their mouths, "I'm a Muslim." People say
Hmm.
with their mouths, "I'm Quran alone,"
Hmm.
or people can say, "I'm a Christian or a Hindu," and
Yeah.
they could have vastly different views than you do.
Hmm.
Or people that say something, they attest with their lips something completely different, but they have the exact same views as you.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So your qawm or your people or your community is more defined by the commonalities that you can agree on, or is
Exactly.
it more defined by the attestation that come out of your mouth?
Yeah. True. True. Well, the thing
So,
is, what I see is that whenever these communities and things happen, the human equation drops in the picture, and some people are alpha males, and some people are more clever and smart, and they sometimes they get evil, and they start controlling people, and then they have agendas, and then shaitan comes to them and be like, okay, now you're going to be my emissary, and you're
hmm,
going to lead all these people into the grand deception. So that happens a lot. That happens a lot. But that's what I'm saying. If people are aligned on the same ayat of Allah in the same way and understanding, obviously we are all humans have different perceptions and stuff. But if we come on the same page, as in the commonality, that's how the Quran says, come amongst you in common terms,
common
right?
terms. Yeah.
We don't do that. We don't even know what the common terms are. So we need to like you said, okay, in that roommate situation, the same thing, common terms. Like they need to understand, okay, this is a woman, I'm a man. I've got different things. She's got different things, but there's a lot of things we do which are same. Like we both eat, we both yawn, we both sleep, we both go out, work, whatever. Other than that, so these kind of respect should be there while you're dealing with society or anybody. And this is how, people just all they have to do is they have to be conscious about their own actions.
Hmm.
That's what the main thing is. If you're not conscious enough, then you're not eligible. Simple. Another thing, when you said that, look, when you were talking about the majority and minority thing,
Hmm.
and when you obviously are the minority, then you are kind of, you feel like I'm left behind. But I guess that's for the better.
Yeah.
Why? Because if you're left behind, then now you can choose a new path.
Hmm.
But if you keep walking in the same sheep walk, then yeah, then this is what happens. Yeah,
Okay.
what's happening
So
already.
if you have that type of a understanding or an idea
Mm,
that you want to become off-gritter, you want to like have a cleaner life, those types of ideas, there
mm,
are people around the world who say share the same sentiments or same ideologies,
mm.
and because of the internet and mass communication, we're able to connect with all these types of different people.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So if you did, then what would that society look like? Is it going to be live and let live, everybody does their own thing? Are there going to be common rules that you would all agree on, or is it
I
just
mean,
going to be
look,
like
obviously, whenever societies form, there automatically some sort of governance, it, like builds up automatically. You can't be like, oh, we're just 10 big families and we are like, we all come on the round table in the night and we make our decisions. It doesn't work like that. It might be working in some tribal system somewhere, but even when that doesn't work, then they wage war on the other tribe, you know so one
right?
family fighting. Because I'm from Pakistan, in my tribes in the northern Pakistan, they literally have a family, feud for
Hmm.
generations. They'll kill his
Vaderes,
son. Yeah, they'll kill his son, then they'll kill their nephew, then it keeps going on for years and years and years.
right?
So that's the thing. The main thing has to be, the main thing comes back to being a Muslim. Be peaceful, give peace, and don't be afraid. Simple as that. If you can do that, you don't have any issues anymore, because you won't be afraid to voice your opinion, and you would be cautious of keeping the peace.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean you have to people please. You be straight, transparent upon how much you can. Look, for instance, Musa in the Quran, right? He was empowered by Allah, but he had his fears and everything. So Allah told him, don't worry, do like this, do like that. Allah was educating him,
Hmm.
right? But then, Firaun was powerful. So the thing is, when you have to actually calculate all of your movement and actions according to who you're facing. The equation changes from person to person. You can't talk to your son like how you talk to your wife, or you talk to your employee, or you talk to some stranger on the road. you
Hmm.
know yeah, so these things. So the good people, the good actual believers, they're conscious, they have to be conscious of that you
Right.
know
Yeah, but that's ideally speaking. So there's no planning for politics or government or economic system or
I
any
mean,
kind of rules.
I think like whenever you want to bring these things in the middle, then what is the template to follow? What is the instruction manual? The instruction manual, we have already run away from those places. you know so
I
it's just
see.
like, in the UK, the big Muslim invasion is happening. A lot of these people are saying, oh, we gave them protection. So then I said to them, well, they brought their germs from there, the ones
Mm.
they were running from. Now they're gonna make you run from your land because you
Mm.
invited them, and there you go. So that's how it's happening.
So you're anti-immigration to UK?
No, no, I'm not. I'm just anti controlled religion, basically anti
Hmm.
man-made religion, and subjugation. Basically, playing with the hearts and faiths and minds of people. Yeah.
So you're saying that the Islamic people that are coming to UK are more radical in terms of they want their religion to supersede
I
everybody else's.
No. Basically, the thing is, in Pakistan, when everybody's a Muslim, it's not a big deal. Okay. But when you come out and then you are one out of 100, right? Then you care about yourself. Then you're like, I need to stick with who I am, and it's just like a tribal wolf pack kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they all pack up together, and they're just like when people go to jail. A lot of the non-Muslims become Muslim. Why? Just
Mm.
for the jail. When they come out, then they start doing whatever they were doing. But why? Because it's all like, cult gang type kind of thing.
So actually, that's a really good example that you just gave about the jail. If
Mm,
you go to jail and then you want to join a group, most likely the safest group to join would be the Muslim group, right? They're
exactly.
not going to be up to any kind of craziness and racism or, alcohol, drugs, all that other stuff.
No, but I tell you something. In the jail, all the other people are scared of the Muslims. I'm not saying that they're like, being gangsters on them.
Mm.
They are like kind of, have the superiority and majority in number complex. They have that.
Mm.
And they all look. I know the insider story a little bit. Inside, everybody is just, operating on a certain level. Everybody's not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And they might be coming praying 5 times a day, but they'd be lying, they'd be cheating, they'd be doing this, that. All of that is happening. And then they go do 2 3 prostrations and then raise their hand and be like, Allah, forgive me, forgive me. Oh, I'm forgiven. Okay, let's go back to that again. What?
Mm.
What's the point? you know it's just like you can go cheat with your wife, and then you can recuperate and then cheat again. Then what kind of human are you?
Right.
you know
You also mentioned mergers and acquisitions earlier. When multiple companies they merge together, they have to go through a tremendous mountain of paperwork to see how the two can merge, whose rules are going to be taken, whose assets are
Exactly.
going to be taken, who's going to be the decision maker.
Exactly. So look, for instance, one random Mr. X gets married to Miss Y. Yeah, married as in they keep Allah as a witness, and they make a solemn pledge to each other, and get hooked. All right. They don't need to do a nikah and kabul kind of thing. They don't have to do any of that stuff. All right.
Mm.
They just do that. Before doing that, they go through the whole checklist of responsibilities, desires, needs, and whatever. Because if they didn't do that, you can't say that their idea of doing that was wrong. No, they were not capable to do it properly. You can't blame the car for the driver's mistakes, right?
Right.
Like in some weird situations, they say that, oh, it wasn't the dog's fault, but he had rabies and we had to put him down.
Mm.
Yeah, but those are dogs. You're human beings. You're actually conscious about this thing. Allah has given you a lisan. The word lisan and insan, how close they are.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because without the lisan is the way we communicate. The insan communicates. So it's like, it's the template of us.
Hmm.
So we need to communicate everything. That's why Allah is communicating to us in the Quran. He's communicating using words, and
Right.
those words are actually sounds. We can't hear Allah's voice, but we can, we know what it is. And those, I'll tell you another very good tangent. Basically, the Quran tilawat, people listen to it and they benefit. They do it themselves. I used to do it a lot. I used to listen to it a lot.
Hmm.
What they're benefiting from is when you are hearing, or when you are pronouncing Arabic properly. The Arabic lisanul Arab is made in such a way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed it, that it touches 7 sections in the body using those 28 alphabets. So they touch 7 sections in the mouth, which actually control your stomach and a lot of your organs, just like the 7 chakras.
I see. So
Yeah.
you're talking about the harmonics of the recitation.
I mean, way beyond than that. That's just what we can perceive in it. On the metaphysical level, I don't know what's happening.
Hmm. Is there any way to test it?
Yeah, I've tested it in a lot of ways. Again. If you find somebody who's got a habit of saying astaghfirullah 100,000 times a day, right?
Right.
If you make them stop doing it for 1 2 3 days, they'll go into anxiety, they'll have health issues, they'll have all of that. I'm not saying that they were doing something right. No, it's just like an addiction. You got addicted to smoking. It's just like when you leave that, you get a problem in your body. So
Yeah, withdrawals.
I'm not comparing it to smoking, but what I'm saying is that when you utter these words, you're doing NLP, you're training your body, you're giving rhythms and frequencies. So it's just like a psychological yoga in a sense, isn't it?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting points, brother. Truth matters. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with us?
There's so many strange topics that we can talk about. There's another one called salsal, yeah? Salsal.
Yeah.
Salsal means
silsila.
al-fakhar. Yeah. So
Right.
that word salsal, which they say sounding clay.
Mhm.
There is no, basically they say that's Arabic root sin lam. There's no 4-letter Arabic root. So they would say, oh yes, in lexicons. I don't care about that. It doesn't sound right, because there is no actual root like that. But for that word, they say, oh, it's this root and it has only this meaning, and that's all. The end of story. Now, crazy thing, the word salsal means sounding clay, something that's resonating, right?
Hmm.
Have you heard of the word salsa? The salsa dance, and also the salsa,
The
you know, we have
sauce,
the nachos with, yeah.
right?
So it's giving a context of fiery, spicy, and rhythmic movements.
No, salsa is just the sauce. Salsa picante would be the hot sauce.
No, I'm talking about the salsa ballroom dance, the Latin dance.
Oh, okay, okay, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both. So the movement and the fieriness.
Mm-hmm.
Salsal. I mean, that's what I think. I have a, you know, that's my take. That's where the word came from. But in Arabic, when you go into living Arabic or you go into the lexicons, you're dead end basically. You know.
Right.
Another
But in the
interesting.
context of what you just mentioned about
Yeah.
the ringing clay,
Yeah,
um,
sounding clay.
sounding clay, or yeah. So, in order for you to have a clay that's going to make that sound, if you flick it, right,
Yeah.
you
You do
have
that.
to form it in
Yeah.
a very specific way. You
Mhm.
can't just take a lump of mud and
Yeah.
then bake it, and then it's going to make that sound. You
Yeah.
know.
True.
So it's the formation of that whole thing, and Allah's mentioning about the mud before that.
Yeah.
And also
Also,
he's
I have.
explaining about the Jan that he created with the heat, with
Mhm.
fire.
Mhm.
So there are lots of context to that verse.
There's another one. Do you know the dwarf suffer
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
Muslims recite? It's
Subhanalladhi
40,
sakhra
yeah,
lana hadha wa ma kunna lahu.
43:13, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you open that, by the way, how long are we here for? A little while more?
Yeah, a
Or
little
we have
bit
to,
more. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So I think we can do this. The last one. Open that, please. 43:13.
Surah Zukhruf,
Yes.
and then 13. I'm sharing the screen again. 1 second. $13.
Yeah. Okay. That you may sit firmly on their backs, right? Zuhurihi.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes the dua, then Subhanalladhi sakhara lana hadha wa ma kunna lahu muqrinin. Okay. Now the thing is, they say that this is to be used for a car, for a van, for a airplane, for a submarine, for a helicopter, for a camel, everything, right?
Sure.
For a camel and a horse, understandable, but you can't sit on the backs of a plane, of a car, of a submarine, of a,
Motorcycle?
yeah. I mean, okay, fine, motorcycle, that's designed like that, but this doesn't fit on those, right? So we have to do more further digging into what this is, because there's a word used over here, muqrinina, in the last word, right? That same root has been used for in an ayah where Suleiman was given the power to do muqrinin, the jinns, bind them. Qaran. You know the qarnan, the qaran?
The horn or the
Yeah.
face?
Okay, now you know the why is a horn called a qaran? Because it's one of two. So it's a binding thing.
Hmm.
You getting my point? So what
Okay.
I see in my understanding is that this is an instance which was maybe in the past, maybe it comes in the future again, I don't know. That you sit on some kind of a beast. I'm not saying these beasts that we have, something else. We sit on that, and then you take Allah's name, and Allah gives you the power to bind it with you. Because muqrinin, this
Right.
thing cannot happen without Allah's permission, because you cannot bind the jinn with your own will, you know. So that is another thing for you guys to contemplate upon.
Very
That,
interesting.
inshallah, yeah.
So it's been a pleasure, brother. Truth Matters, to have you on the podcast, and
Same,
we've covered
bro,
a lot
same.
of a
It
lot
was
of
a good
points.
one. It was a good one, yeah, definitely.
Alhamdulillah. And it doesn't, like I said, this is a very good demonstration of how people disagree on things and are still able to communicate and have mutual respect,
Yeah,
and we're able to, consider each other's points and challenge each other. And that's what the whole thing is about. So if
The
we create
last, there's one last short thing I would want everybody to hear and want to think about. The Quran says, "Inna anzalna." Anzalna, yeah. Anzalna means it came down. Okay.
sent down.
Yeah. Now, let's say if I am living in Pakistan and you're living in Australia,
Hmm.
the what is the vertical setting over here? Where is it
Coming
coming
down.
down from? Where is
Right.
it coming down from? From down from under me or from above
Hmm.
me?
Right.
Yeah. So this is another one I want everybody to think about.
Interesting. Some people believe that the earth is flat
I mean,
because of
people
that
believe a lot of
verse.
things. I don't believe as in like the pizza pie kind of thing. I believe what the Quran says, that
Hmm.
it's got autad, it's got boundaries, it's got some things like these we haven't thought much about. Also, it uses the word farasha. Farasha. We
Hmm.
have the word farsh, which means
The
floor.
floor. Yeah.
Yeah, the floor is never round. I've never seen a ball hover in space on which water can circulate, and I mean, it's crazy. If
So
you
you
put
you you are a flat earther then.
not a flat earther like how these guys are on YouTube. I'm more into the Quranic cosmology, because you never
Hmm.
know what the earth is actually and how it is until unless you go deep into it. Another
Okay.
thing, the now what NASA and the scientists are giving the description or the diagram of the universe,
Hmm.
it's like a sphere. That is like a sphere.
The universe is like a sphere.
Yeah, and there's like a black hole at the end or something like that, or like there's a black hole separating us from everything. That's the mainstream thing. So the spherical model is
Hmm.
there, but I'm not saying that
But not for the earth.
I don't think so, because look, Allah tells us that you are ashraful makhluqat. Yeah. And but what this narrative tells us, that oh, you're a little speck in this big huge vast ocean, nobody cares about you, you're just a little speck. Big bad aliens are going to come and subjugate you, like how they created you in the past. So this is all these agendas basically going on. Yeah.
This is a topic for a very good discussion
Inshallah, inshallah,
in
inshallah.
itself, inshallah.
Yeah,
That
we can book
flat
another
earth and
one
the
whenever you.
spherical earth.
Yeah, whenever you
Absolutely.
have
Yeah.
time, we can book another one. Inshallah, let me
Yeah.
know.
I have a few other friends that are also flat earthers. So
Yeah,
I myself, I'm not a flat earther, I'm a spherical earther, but not because I know something that you don't know.
yeah, yeah.
It's just what I choose to believe based on what is expedient for the world model that we operate in. Meaning that, for example, the GPS and the coordinates that they give us, it's
Mm,
convenient to operate under that. You know, so that's the only reason. I'm not making a claim that I know I've gone to space or I'm buying the NASA images that have been cobbled together. But I understand that the whole point should be that you understand both sides of the argument. That should be the important point in this.
mm,
Not that you take a position and say the other side of the positions, they're ignoramus or whatnot. That's what a lot of people end up taking. That, like, for example,
yeah.
when I first used to think about the moon landing and things like that, I was convinced 100%. And then when I looked at the details, it's not as convincing anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so same way about even the people who claim the flat Earth. I asked them the question: why don't you go out and look at the moon and the sun at the same time? There are times during the daytime when the moon is out and the sun is out. Every single time that I've noticed that the side of the moon that is lighted
Mm-hmm,
is where the sun is,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
so I asked them, then if your idea is that these, moon has its own light, and the sun and the moon are roughly the same size and all these kinds of things, then explain these things then. I mean, I sympathize with them questioning what the mainstream is saying, but also question what you yourself are saying, you know.
mm-hmm.
So
I'll
yeah.
in some games and in some this what do you call it, secret operations kind of fiction, they actually use a drug. Whenever they do these missions, they take a drug which is designed to keep their sanity in check. So basically,
Okay.
what actually happens to people is that when you go into the uncharted waters, you have a risk of losing your sanity. That's why people stay where they are always.
Have you
And
ever
it's
seen the
yeah.
Deep Space Nine?
Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Deep Space Nine too much. I watched the Next Generation. I watched Enterprise. I watched yeah, Voyager.
Yeah.
Watched all
Deep
of them.
Space Nine is one of the spin-offs, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's got this race called the Jem'Hadar. They're like
Okay.
brutally efficient fighters, and they use this drug also. It's called the Kestrel White,
Wow.
and they're basically that's almost their exclusive diet,
There
or
you go.
they can't live without it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it all depends upon man. Our perception is just like a box, and you have to keep expanding the horizon. Then it's not a box anymore. Becomes a field.
hmm.
So yeah, that's the thing.
Very interesting. So thank you again, Brother Truth, to come for coming on the podcast. Inshallah, we'll have more such interactions in the future.
Definitely, inshallah. I would recommend to you get Iqbal Naseem. Although I don't know what
Absolutely,
his
yeah.
actually understanding is about things, but he seems quite much of the kind of person that, like, can make changes. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
get in touch with him. Get in touch with him. I think
yeah,
he'll
yeah.
get in touch with you. Yeah,
If
definitely.
you're able to have his contact information or
I'll pass it to you. I'll pass it
yeah,
to you.
inshallah.
Yeah,
Shukran,
inshallah.
brother.
No worries, brother.
Salamun alaikum.
Salaam alaikum, both of you. Take care.